Hello everyone, we are working on IG 104 examination content. So as part of this preparation, configure and manage virtual networks for Azure administrators. We have completed configure virtual networks, configure network security groups in our last two sessions. Now we'll be continuing on configure Azure DNS. Let's go to the introduction. Azure DNS is a hosting service that allows you to manage your DNS domains using Microsoft Azure infrastructure. Suppose your company obtains a custom domain name for a new website. You need to use Azure DNS to manage this domain. Identify domains and custom domains. Azure DNS enables you to host your DNS domains in Azure and access name resolution for your domains by using Azure Microsoft infrastructure. You can configure and manage your custom domains with Azure DNS in Azure portal. By accessing your domains in Azure, you can use your same credentials, support agreements, and billing preferences as for your other Azure services. Before you begin using Azure DNS to host DNS records for your domains, there are few important concepts to review. Things to know about domain names in Azure. When you create an Azure subscription, Azure automatically creates Microsoft Entra domain for your subscription AD domain. You must be global administrator to perform domain management tasks. Global administrator is the user who created the subscription. Global administrator is the user who created the subscription, and we should be the global administrators to perform domain management tasks. Azure applies an initial domain name to your initial domain name instance. Yes, Azure applies an initial domain name to your initial domain instance. The initial domain name follows the form your domain name followed by onmicrosoft.com. For example, your domain name onmicrosoft.com. The purpose of custom domain name is to provide simplified form of your domain name to support specific users or tasks. Organizations commonly implement custom domain names to enable users to access their domain by using credentials they are familiar with. Consider the Azure administrator incorporated Microsoft Entra domain. Azure creates the initial domain name for the Microsoft Entra instance as Azure admin incorg on Microsoft.com. A custom domain name for the instance could be Azure admin inc.org. The initial domain name is intended to be used until your custom domain name is verified. Okay. Before a custom domain name can be used by Microsoft Entra ID, the custom domain name must be added to your directory and verified. The initial domain name cannot be changed or deleted, but you can add a routable custom domain name that you control. In Microsoft Entra ID, domain names must be globally unique. When one Microsoft Entra directory has verified a specific domain name, other Microsoft Entra directories cannot use that same domain name. Okay, great. Verify custom domain name. When an administrator adds a custom domain name to Microsoft Entra instance, the custom domain name is initially unverified state. Microsoft Entra ID won't allow any directory resources to use a custom domain name that is unverified. Before you can use custom domain name for your Microsoft Entra instance, your custom domain name must be verified. How to verify your custom domain name? After you add a custom domain name for Microsoft Entra instance in Azure portal, you must verify the ownership of your custom domain name. You initiate the verification process by adding DNS record for your custom domain name. The DNS record type can be MX or TXT as shown in the following image. Only two types of record types are there, TXT or MX. The MX mail exchange record lists mail exchange servers that accepts email for your domain. The TXT record indicates human readable text matching readable data about your domain. These record types are defined in RFC 1035. After you add a DNS record to to your custom domain name, Azure requires DNS domain for the presence of the DNS record. Azure verification process can take several minutes or hours. After Azure verifies the presence of the DNS record for your custom domain name, Azure adds your new custom domain name to your subscription for the Microsoft Entra instance. After you add DNS record to your custom domain name, Azure queries the DNS domain for the presence of the DNS record. Yes. These are the type values. MX means mail exchange, TXT means text strings, CNAME, canonical name for alias. I don't understand what is that. Okay, for our point, now MX is for mail exchange, TXT record indicates human readable text or machine readable data about your domain. Okay, create Azure DNS zones. Azure DNS provides reliable, secure DNS service to manage and resolve domain names in a virtual network without needing to add a custom DNS solution. An Azure DNS hosts DNS record for a domain. To begin hosting your domain in Azure DNS, you need to create a DNS zone for your domain name. Each DNS record your domain name is then created inside your DNS zone. Things to know about DNS zones. You can add a DNS zone in Azure portal as shown in the following image. Several configuration settings are required to create DNS zone. In Azure portal, you specify the DNS zone name, number of records, resource group, zone location, associated subscription, DNS name, servers. So this is the UI. Take a moment to review some important characteristics about DNS zone. Within a resource group, the name of the DNS zone must be unique. Resource group, the name of the DNS zone must be unique. By providing a unique name, when you create a new DNS zone, Azure ensures that DNS zone doesn't already exist in the resource group. Multiple DNS zones can have the same name, but the DNS zone must exist in different resource group or in a different Azure subscription. When multiple DNS zones share the same name, each DNS zone instance is assigned to a different DNS name server address. The root or parent domain is registered at the registrar and then pointed to Azure DNS. Child domains are registered directly in Azure DNS. You don't have to own a domain name to create a DNS zone with the domain name in Azure DNS. However, you do need to own the domain to configure the domain. Delegate DNS domains. To delegate your domain to Azure DNS, you need to identify the DNS name servers for your DNS zone. Each DNS zone is created. Azure DNS allocates DNS name servers from a pool. After the DNS name servers are assigned, Azure DNS automatically creates authoritative NS records in your DNS zone. The delegation process for your domain involves several steps. Identify your DNS name servers, update your parent domain, delegate subdomains. How to find your DNS name servers? The easiest way to find the DNS name servers assigned to your DNS zone is through Azure portal. Let's take another look at our sample administrator incorporated Microsoft Entra domain. In previous unit, we defined a custom domain name for sample instance as Azure Admin Inc. org. In the Azure portal, we can examine the custom domain and find the Azure assigned 4 DNS name servers to the DNS zone for the domain ns102, 04, 03, 02, and so on. This is name server 1, name server 2, ns1, 04, ns2, 04. This is contosotest.com, but we have Azure Admin inc.org. Okay, it's an example image. How to update your parent domain? After DNS zone is created and you can identify your DNS name servers, you need to update your parent domain. Each registrar has their own DNS management tools to manage the DNS name server record for a domain. The term registrar refers to the third-party domain registrar, which is the company where you register your domain. Here is the basic process you can follow. Update your parent domain information within your registrar. Go to your registrar's DNS management page. Find existing NS record for your parent domain. Replace the existing record with NS record created for your domain by Azure DNS. Things to consider when working with NS records. There are several important considerations to keep in mind when working with NS records and name servers for a DNS zone. When you copy an NS record, a DNS name server address, be sure include a trailing period dot at the end of the address. The trailing period indicates the end of a fully qualified domain name, such as ns102azurdns.com. To delegate your domain to Azure DNS, you must use extract name of the DNS name servers as created by Azure DNS. We recommend that you always copy all DNS name servers NS records for your domain to parent domain, regardless of the actual domain name. In our sample scenario, suppose we don't expect traffic on the DNS server, although we don't expect traffic on the DNS name server address. The best practice is also copy NS record to the parent domain with the registrar along with the other name server addresses. How to delegate subdomains? You can delegate a subdomain for your domain in Azure DNS by setting up a separate third child DNS zone. Let's consider a sample administrator incorporated Microsoft Enter domain. We need a custom domain name for the instance as azure.org. We can configure a separate child DNS zone for a custom domain to support partners of the organization, such as partners.org. The configuration steps for delegating a child DNS are similar to the typical delegation process. The key difference is you don't work with your registrar to delegate subdomain. You delegate the child DNS zone in Azure portal. Here are the steps to delegate a subdomain. Go to the parent DNS zone for your domain in Azure portal. Find existing NS record for your parent domain. Create an NS record for your child DNS zone subdomain. The parent and child DNS zones can be in the same or different resource group. In our example, notice that NS record server name in the child DNS zone is the same as for the parent DNS zone. The one difference that identifies the subdomain is the addition of the keyword partners with the separating period. Add DNS record sets. It's important to understand the difference between DNS record sets and individual DNS records. A DNS record set is also known as a resource record set, is a collection of records in a DNS zone. You define record sets in Azure portal. The configuration setting depends on the report type for the set to create. Suppose choose to create a set of records, address record to identify IP addresses associated with your domain. To create a record, you need to provide TTL, time to live, and the IP addresses. The TTL value specifies how long each record is cached by clients. Things to know about DNS record sets. Let's examine some characteristics of DNS record set. All records in a DNS record set must have the same name and the same record type. Consider the following example where you have two records in a record set. All records have the same name. All records have a same record type A. Each record in the set has a different value. In this case, each record provides different IP address. A DNS record set can contain two identical records, same records. A record set of type CNAME can contain only one record. A CNAME record, canonical name record, provides alias of the domain name to another. This record is used to provide another name for your domain. The DNS lookup operation tries to find your domain by retrying the lookup with the other name specified in the CNAME record. You can create a record set that doesn't have any record. This set is called an empty record set. If you have an empty record set in your domain, this set doesn't appear on your DNS name servers. Plan your Azure Private DNS zones. Plan for Azure Private DNS zones. Azure Private DNS zones can be created by using your own custom domain names rather than names provided by Azure. With your own custom domain names, you can tailor your virtual network architecture to best suit your organization needs. You gain name resolution for virtual machine within your network and between virtual networks. You can configure DNS zone names with a split horizon view, which allows a private and public DNS zone to share the same domain name. You can configure DNS zone names with a split horizon view. Things to know about Azure Private DNS benefits. There are many benefits to implementing Azure Private DNS for your domain. No custom DNS solution required. Previously, many customers created custom DNS resolutions to manage DNS zone in their virtual network. You can now perform DNS zone management by using the native administrator infrastructure. Azure Private DNS removes the burden of creating and managing custom DNS zone solutions. Support for common DNS record types. Azure Private DNS supports all DNS record types including AAA, CNAME, MX, PTR, SOI, SRV, TXT. Automatic hostname record management. Along with hosting your custom DNS records, Azure Private DNS automatically maintains hostname records for virtual machines in the specified virtual network. In this scenario, you can optimize the domain names you use without needing to create custom domains, solutions, or modify application. Hostname resolution between virtual networks. Unlike Azure provided hostnames, Azure Private DNS zones can be shared between virtual networks. This capability simplifies cross-network and service discovery scenarios such as network peering. Familiar tools and user experience. To reduce the learning curve, Azure Private DNS uses well-established Azure DNS tools, including PowerShell, Azure Resource Manager templates, and REST API. Split horizon DNS support. With Azure Private DNS, you can create zones with the same name that resolve to different answers from within a virtual network and from public internet. A typical scenario for a split horizon DNS is provided a dedication version of service for use inside your virtual network. Azure region support. Azure Private DNS zones are available in all Azure regions in the Azure public cloud. Azure Private DNS zone scenarios. Name resolution scope to a single virtual network. First scenario consists of two virtual networks and resources in Azure that include virtual machines. The resources needs to be resolved from within the virtual network by using a specific domain name, DNS zone. The name resolution needs to be private, not accessible from internet. The scenario requires Azure should automatically register the virtual machines within the virtual network into the DNS zones. Let's examine the details. Virtual network 1 contains two virtual machines, VM1 and VM2. VM1 and VM2 each have private IP address. When Azure DNS zone is created and linked to virtual network, Azure DNS automatically creates two A records in the DNS zone if auto registration is enabled in the configuration. In these scenarios, Azure DNS uses only virtual network 2 to resolve domain name queries. Azure DNS queries from VM1 in virtual network 1 to resolve VM2 address receive an Azure DNS response that contains private IP address of VM2. Okay, got it. A reverse DNS query for the private IP address of VM1 issued to VM2 receive Azure DNS response that contains FQDN of VM1 as expected. Name resolution for multiple networks. The second scenario involves the name resolution across multiple networks. which probably most common usage of Azure Private DNS zone. This scenario consists of two virtual networks. One network is focused on registration, another supports the name resolution. Here are the details. A virtual network is designed for registration, two is designed for name resolution. The designation strategy for both virtual networks to share common DNS zones across contoso.lab. The resolution and registration virtual networks are linked to common DNS zone. Azure Private DNS zone records for virtual machines and virtual network are created automatically. For virtual machines and virtual network too, Azure Private DNS zone records can be created manually. In this scenario, Azure DNS uses both virtual networks to resolve domain name queries. An Azure DNS query from virtual machine in virtual network 2 for a virtual machine in virtual network 1 receives Azure DNS response containing private IP address of the virtual machine. Reverse DNS queries are scoped to the same virtual network. A reverse DNS query from virtual network in virtual network 2 for virtual machine in virtual network 1 receives an Azure DNS response containing the NX domain of the virtual machine. NX domain is an error message that indicates the queried domain doesn't exist. A reverse DNS query from virtual machine in virtual network 1 for virtual machine also in virtual network 1 receives the FQDN for the virtual machine. Interactive lab simulation. I'm excited for that because there is only we learn much. In this unit, you will configure DNS room resolution and create private DNS zone. You will link the VNets for registration and resolution and then create two virtual machines and test the configuration. Let's see, I'm very excited. So this is DNS zone, this is VNet link, East US, database subnet, core services VNet. So objectives: create a private DNS zone, link subnet for auto registration, create virtual machine to test the configuration, use a template to create virtual machines, you can review the lab template, use PowerShell to deploy the template, verify records are present in the DNS zone. Great, let's start.
Welcome to this interactive lab simulation for the lab Configure DNS settings in Azure. To navigate this interactive lab simulation, follow the prompts on the screen. In this lab, you'll complete the tasks listed on your screen. In this first task, you'll create a private DNS zone. Follow the prompts to complete this task. In the Azure portal, search for and select Private DNS Zones. Next, select Create. Create a private DNS zone with the settings as shown on your screen. Select Review and Create. Next, select Create. Wait until the deployment is complete. This task is now complete. Click the screen to continue. In this next task, you will link virtual networks to the private DNS zone and enable auto registration. In the left pane, under Settings, next select Add. Add a virtual network link for Core Services VNet with the settings as shown. Select OK. Configure the settings as shown. Select OK. The manufacturing VNet link has been. Configure the settings as shown. Select OK. The Research VNet link has been created and auto registration is enabled. This task is now complete. Click the screen to continue. In this next task, you will open a PowerShell session within the Cloud Shell pane. upload the template and parameters files into the Cloud Shell home directory. To view and specify your Azure subscription, run the commands as shown. Next, deploy the ARM template to create the virtual machines. Now return to the Azure portal and verify that the VMs have been created. This task is now complete. Click the screen to continue. Navigate to the Private DNS zone. Verify that host A records are listed for both VMs and make a note of the names and IP addresses of the VMs. Next, follow the prompts to connect to test VM1 using RDP. Verify that host A records are listed for both VMs and make a note of the names and IP addresses of the VMs. Next, follow the prompts to connect to test VM1 using RDP. On test VM1, open a command prompt and run the command as shown. The IPv4 address is the same as the address you noted earlier for test VM1 in the private DNS zone. Next, run the command as shown. The FQDN resolves to the IP address for test VM2 that you noted earlier in the private DNS zone. The command returns a successful name resolution record for test VM2. Close the RDP connection window. This task is now complete. Click the screen to continue. This interactive lab simulation is now complete.
We have completed our lab simulation. Now let's do the knowledge check. Manage custom domain. For a new company, you are working on implementation plan for DNS zone, DNS delegation, DNS record set. The IT team wants to know if there are advantages to use Azure Private DNS. Admin team needs information about mapping DNS records to IP address. Which summary best describes the main purpose of Azure DNS? Best describes. It's this one only. Registered domain for website and its associated records. What type of DNS record can map one or more IP addresses against a single domain name? I think it's a record. Azure Private DNS supports which of the following scenarios? Manage and resolve down virtual network by adding custom domain. Manage. Let's see. Great. Amazing. The AAA record maps an IP address to a domain. Multiple IP addresses are known as a record set. Multiple IP addresses are known as a record set. Azure Private DNS manages and resolves domain names in a virtual network without adding a custom DNS solution. Azure DNS hosts the registered domains. Administrators can control configure domain records like CNAME, A, and MX and set up alias records. Let's go to the summary and resources. The main takeaways are: Azure DNS is a hosting service that allows you to manage DNS domains using Microsoft Azure infrastructure. You can verify a custom domain name using DNS records and implement DNS zones, delegation, and record sets. Azure DNS is a reliable and secure DNS service that eliminates need for custom DNS solution in a virtual network. Private DNS zones in Azure offer more flexibility in designing virtual network architecture and provide name resolution between virtual networks. Yeah, that's it for today. Let's meet on the next session. Thanks for watching.